Call this meeting to order. This is a meeting of Orangeville Town Council for Monday, June the 8th, 2021. Due to efforts to contain the spread of COVID-19 and to protect all individuals, the council chambers at Town Hall will not be open to the public to attend council meetings until further notice. Members of the public who have an interest in a matter listed on the agenda may, up until 10 a.m. on the day of the scheduled council meeting, email councilagenda@orangeville.ca indicating your request to speak to a matter listed on the agenda. A phone number and conference ID code will be provided to you so you may join the virtual meeting and provide your comments to council. Delegates, please remember to keep your microphone muted and your camera turned off until it is your turn to address council. As a reminder, in accordance with our procedure bylaw, delegates are permitted 5 minutes to address council. Members of the public wishing to raise a question during the public question period of the council meeting may, beginning at 8 p.m. on the evening of the council meeting, call 1-289-801-5774 and enter conference ID 544-232-446#. Correspondence and emails submitted will be considered as public information and entered into the public record. If you require access to information in an alternate format, please contact the Clerk's Division by phone at 519-941-0440 extension 2256 or via email at theclerksdepartment@orangeville.ca. We would like to acknowledge the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe people, including the Ojibwe, Potawatomi, and Odawa of the Three Fires Confederacy. This meeting is being aired on public television and our stream live and may be taped for later public broadcast or webcast. Your name is part of the public record and will be included in the minutes of this meeting. Mr. Bonato, could we have the singing of our national anthem, please?
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. With glowing hearts we see thee rise, the true north strong and free. From far and wide, O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
Thank you very much to David Nairn, the Artistic Director of Theatre Orangeville, for that rendition of our national anthem. Earlier tonight, starting at 5:30, Council had a closed session. During that closed session, the following occurred, and that we will have a motion here to receive the closed council minutes from June the 14th, 2021, and that a confidential report, CPS 2021-048, committee appointments, the Men's Homelessness Committee regarding personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees, be received, and that a confidential verbal report from Ed Brennan, CAO, regarding 120 Sea Line and 195 Centennial rail line spur regarding a proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of land by the municipality or local board, position, plan, procedure, criteria, or instruction to be applied to any negotiation carried on or to be carried on by or on behalf of the municipality or local board be received, and that training for council staff relations relating to educating or training the members be received, and that staff proceed as directed. May I have a motion on that, please? Councillor Peters, second by Councillor Andrews. All in favor? All right, thank you. Could I have a motion also to receive and approve the minutes of previous council meetings on June the 7th and June the 14th, 2021? Councillor Sherwood, second by Councillor Taylor. All in favor? Very good. Moving on to presentations, 11.1. We have with us tonight Mr. Terence Carter regarding men's homelessness. Welcome, Mr. Carter. Over to you, sir.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of council. I'll be brief. I simply want to read into the record an email that I sent to you members of council on Saturday morning at 8:56 a.m. The email reads as follows. Hello, Mr. Mayor and members of Town Council. First of all, I want to commend all of you for your sensitivity and concern about the issue of men's homelessness in Orangeville, and in particular for the mayor's leadership and the formation of the mayor's committee on men's homelessness. I have nothing but admiration and support for the work of the mayor and members of Town Council in this regard. I'm writing to once again emphasize that there is an urgent need for a men's emergency shelter in Orangeville as soon as possible. I've been advocating for this on and off for the past 7 years, but to no avail. Subsequent to my delegation to Town Council at the end of April of this year, in support of the formation of the Mayor's Committee on Men's Homelessness, I've had a number of additional encounters with men who are homeless. Of course, I do what I can to help them by offering them accommodation and food. That is what anyone would do. My point is that the problem of men's homelessness in the town is a real as well as an urgent issue, as you've heard from others, such as Pastor Matt from the Lighthouse. As a case in point, when I arrived at my office on Broadway early this morning, which was Saturday, I found a man who I've written to you about before sleeping outside the front door of my office. Please see the attached pictures that I took this morning from inside my office and the ones that I also took from outside, none of which prejudiced the privacy of the individual in question. I went back into my office and opened the front door and offered this man a cup of coffee, which he was glad to receive, as well as an opportunity to use our washroom facilities, which he declined. As I've done on numerous occasions with this man, as has the mayor and others, I offered to put his belongings into storage and provide him with a motel room, particularly given that it will be raining all weekend. He declined both offers, but did ask if he could stay under the overhang of the front of our office, as it will provide him with a shelter from the rain this weekend. I said, of course he could. It was the least I could do. As such, this man will more than likely be parked under the overhang of my office on Broadway as shelter from the rain on and off for the next few days with my permission. I recognize this man's situation is unique because he does not want to accept much help. However, there are many other homeless men that I've encountered on Broadway, in particular over the last 8 months, who have been looking for a men's emergency shelter that they could access 24/7, and not just when the County of Dufferin Housing Office is open. Men's homelessness in Orangeville is an acute problem and needs an acute solution. The time for discussion and studies is over. I'm therefore asking that the Mayor's Special Committee on Homelessness be made operational as soon as possible, and that the first order of business be the establishment of a men's emergency shelter in Orangeville this year and before the weather turns cold. This is a collective community problem that requires the collective efforts of concerned citizens, the town, as well as the County of Dufferin. In this regard, I've copied John Creelman on County Council. I'm also copying the town clerk and assistant town clerk in order to have this email officially entered into town council minutes. Again, I want to commend the mayor and members of council for your collective interest and concern about the problem of men's homelessness in Orangeville. My point is not to criticize anyone, but rather to emphasize that the problem is a pressing one, and the time to establish a men's emergency shelter in Orangeville is now. Thank you.
Mr. Carter, thank you for your continuing advocacy and passion for this subject. Tonight we did discuss and approve members for this committee. It will be constituted in the next 2 weeks, and we will have meetings starting shortly thereafter to tackle this very important issue. And I'm with you. I think the timeline, we certainly have to have something in place before the snow flies. And I think we'll work towards that. And Councillors Sherwood and Andrews are on this committee as well. And I think both of them have the same understanding and feeling I do that we need to act sooner than later. So again, thank you for your advocacy, because you have certainly been a driving force here on this subject for a number of years, and we appreciate all of your work that you've put forward, and your continuing assistance with the Lighthouse Soup Kitchen as landlord, and assistance to that organization as well. So thank you, Mr. Carter.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, members of council.
All the best, sir.
Thank you.
Moving on to 11.2, we have Shelly Wishart. Shelly's here again to talk about the Boulevard reconstruction. Ms. Wishart, we've had lots of feedback, and I've certainly, and I'm sure other council members have the opportunity to speak to some local business owners, and we did hear from you last meeting. Is there an update you wish to give us, Ms. Wishart?
Not really an update. I just wanted to thank all of the businesses that participated and sort of made their wishes known with this. It's just so important to give you the feedback in order to support businesses the way that I know that you intend to. And I also really appreciate all of you who listened in order to support our small businesses. So that's all. I just wanted to say thank you.
Very good. Okay, well, thank you for joining us tonight again, and we'll be making some recommendations upcoming during this meeting. Thank you, Ms. Wishart. All right, moving on to item 12.1. This is a staff report regarding Sarah Properties Limited and a non-decision appeal of an application, file OPZ 5-19 INS 2020-42. A recommendation that this report be received and that the staff and town's legal counsel be directed to attend any local planning appeal tribunal pre-hearing and or case management conference convened for the appeals filed by Sarah Properties Limited for their applications to amend the town's official plan and zoning bylaw based on a decision not being made within the timeframes prescribed by the Planning Act, and that staff and legal counsel report back to council as necessary with respect to any updates concerning the status of these appeals. So can we have a motion for this, councillors? Councillor or Deputy Mayor McIntosh, second by Councillor Sherwood. Do we have questions, councillors, or comments? Councillor Peters, and then Councillor Andrews.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Mr. Ward. Thank you for the report. Very detailed. Just hoping you could elaborate on the potential negative outcomes of the situation we're in with this property in terms of whether that's legal or time frame related. We've obviously hit a milestone here where the developer has taken exception to the schedule as it relates to approval. So can you just map out sort of a worst case scenario so we can frame the problem?
Mr. Ward.
Sure, thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Councillor Peters. It is sort of a difficult question to answer in terms of the negative consequences. I would suggest it's really with respect to the decision making on these lands and their employment area designation. That is essentially the root of the issue here. As council may understand or may appreciate, the applications were submitted some time ago. And the challenge has been that employment area designation, and the policy framework basically says we have employment areas to be protected for those uses because we want to make sure our town has enough lands available to accommodate jobs or our employment forecast. We want to be a complete community. It's deeply ingrained in the provincial policy framework. There's good planning reason behind that. So the lands are protected for that, and any redesignation of those lands needs to occur through a comprehensive review. Over the years, that policy framework has tightened up. Initially, it was an exercise that could be done at the municipal level. Then it was to be done at the upper tier. And now it is not only to be done at the upper tier, but in fact, employment lands are to be designated at the upper tier. That currently doesn't exist right now. The county is going through a municipal comprehensive review exercise to basically reconfirm the employment area landscape at the local level. So in doing so, they've asked that municipalities don't make any decisions with respect to any employment area designations that exist in their planning documents right now, because it may jeopardize or interfere with the county's work. So that's essentially why no decision has been made till at this point, and why a decision at this time would be premature. To make a decision right now would indeed be premature. It could jeopardize the county's work and possibly shortchange ourselves with respect to lands we ought to have available for our employment growth for the long term.
Yes, thank you. And I appreciate the rationale behind that, and I definitely support those arguments. Do you believe that's going to be a sufficient leg to stand on when it goes to LPAT? I know you can't predict the future, but it would seem that that's a very strong case on behalf of the municipality. I guess I look to you for reassurance in that regard.
Again, through your worship to Councillor Peters, it's something we are certainly going to be sort of delving into in further detail. Both the application appeals have indicated a desire to continue to work with the municipality going forward. It's a non-decision appeal. There is opportunity for negotiation and potentially a settlement. And should those discussions continue with the proponent or the applicant, that is, and any potential settlement emergence, we would certainly be reporting back to council with respect to what that settlement may look like and seek council direction accordingly. If it does go to an adjudicated hearing process, again, that would be something we would be reporting back to council on with respect to any hearing date, et cetera, and are moving forward towards that.
Thank you. Before I go to Councillor Andrews, I wanted to ask our treasurer, Ms. Syed, can you give us just the broad brush breakdown of our tax base, Ms. Syed, between industrial, commercial lands and residential? I understand we are in a sort of an 85-15 with respect to residential versus industrial commercial. Is that approximately where we're at in terms of our tax base revenue collection?
So, Your Worship, just to clarify, revenue collection is very different than tax base. Are you looking for the ratio of the tax base, or
yeah,
the
tax base, I guess. And as a follow-up to this, what is more common amongst other municipalities in that breakdown? If you could tell us.
All right, let's see if I can address your question. So the first one is for the town of Orangeville, the ratio between residential and the rest of the classes are, and again, don't quote me on this, I'm saying this from the top of my head right now, so it's somewhere between. I
surprised you with this, so I'm just looking for a broad number.
Broad number,
approximate. Yeah.
Absolutely. So we're looking at 70-30, not 85-15. In terms of the ratio for other municipalities, you have to define other for me. Other meaning similar municipalities or?
Okay, so my statement of 85-15 is not correct. It's more like 70-30. Is that what you're saying?
The ratio between residential and all the other tax classes combined. Now, between residential, let's say commercial, industrial, that ratio will change. Between residential and managed forest, that'll change. But I'm just saying for the town of Orangeville, if residential is kind of the base, tax base, that's on 70% of our overall, and 30% will be other tax classes.
Right. And in your experience, you've worked for other municipalities and you're part of municipal, treasurer groups. Where is this number in the ballpark, or is it, should we try and change this number over time?
Okay, so it really depends if it's in the ballpark, because it depends on the region, depends on the growth, economic development of that municipality. But for a municipality of our size, it is typical, I would say. That being said, if council would like more information on this, I can definitely do some more research and come back to you. But I go back to my original question to you, Your Worship, respectfully, when you say other, if you provide me a little bit of refinement of where we are comparing ourselves to, then perhaps the information coming back to council will be more refined.
Well, I guess, you know, healthy municipality financially, and, you know, my thoughts up until this point was that we were a little more skewed in the wrong direction, and that therefore we needed to protect our employment lands more than maybe in other municipalities who might agree to some rezoning. And I just wanted to understand on the financial side if that is in fact the case, and would it strengthen our you know, our position in an appeal at LPAT. That's all.
Okay.
So, okay, Mr. Ward, thank you. Councillor Andrews had a question.
I do. Thank you very much, Your Worship. And I just wanted to echo Councillor Peters' compliment on the detailed report that you provided to council. I truly appreciate all of the information on this particular matter. I'm just wondering, are you able to provide us, members of council, with a ballpark figure of the potential financial impact? I noticed that you conclude, of course, the report with that there's potential financial impacts anticipated. So I'm wondering if you might be able to give us somewhat of an idea.
Through Your Worship to Councillor Andrews, unfortunately, I really can't give a ballpark estimate. It really is so variable depending on how far along this sort of appeal matter goes. Because it's a non-decision, it really is, it now shuttles the process before LPAT in terms of case management events, further dialogue and discussion, or does it go to an eventual hearing? Is that hearing contested, etc.? So it is quite variable. It's very difficult to give a ballpark estimate of legal costs at this time.
Thank you.
Okay, I was gonna ask worst case scenario too, but I guess we'll get that presented to us at some point. But thank you, Mr. Ward.
Right. So, councillors, we have a motion on the floor here to give direction to staff. I think everybody wants to support the continual increase in employment in our town, and that's sort of underlying this, you know, direction to staff. Any further comments or questions that council may have before we vote on giving this direction to staff? Seeing none, all in favor? All right, Mr. Ward, we trust you and your staff and other senior members of the town staff will guide us appropriately in this and with your legal counsel. And let's hope for a happy outcome for all. Thank you. Moving on to 12.2. This is terms of reference regarding official plan review steering committee. That's a recommendation that report INS 2021-043 terms of reference official plan review steering committee be received, and that the terms of reference for the official plan review steering committee as attached to report INS 2021-043 be approved, and the council appoint no more than 2 of its members to serve on this committee, and that staff proceed with the recruitment of members pursuant to the committee composition outlined in the terms of reference. So, councillors, could we have a motion here to approve this, and then we'll have to get into discussion about members on this. Councillor Sherwood, second by Councillor Taylor. So before we move forward, councillors, we need to appoint 2 members to this committee. Councillor Peters wishes, are your hand up, sir? You wish to be on that committee?
Yes.
All right. Councillor Taylor, you're looking to be on that committee as well? Is that correct? Okay. Any other councillors would like to be on this committee? Okay, seeing none, I think we have a solution. Councillor Peters, did you want to speak to this?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, I'm very pleased to see this coming together. As you know, I've been pushing sort of the official plan angle for a while. I think it's a very important document and one that deserves our full attention over the next 6 to 12 months. To that end, I would open it up to the rest of council as well, but I was hoping to discuss the composition a little bit. I think representatives from the various committees is a very strong idea. These are volunteers that have already shown a dedication to the town. I wonder if, given the nature of the matter, being more planning based or sort of land use based, that there might be 1 or 2 individuals in the community that don't sit on a specialty committee that would have interest. And I don't want the committee to get too large by any means, but nor do I want to exclude some expertise that may exist that could contribute to the process.
Well, it's interesting you say that, because these discussions are going to get quite technical and are going to require a certain level of understanding and expertise that may be beyond what some volunteer committee members have. And so I'm not sure how you're going to constitute this committee, but we're certainly going to have to take some resumes, and the people are going to have to show an understanding of these complex matters. It's very complex. So yeah, I'm in total agreement with you, Councillor Peters. Councillor Andrews, your hand up there, and Councillor Sherwood.
Yeah, just yeah. Thank you very much, Your Worship. I was going to say exactly the same thing that Councillor Peters said regarding reaching out to those members of the community that could be added to the committee who may have some expertise, and as we will be reaching out to some of those that are volunteers on some of the different committees that we already have in place. We may not necessarily have those that are either available on those committees and or may not have the expertise but have the willingness. But having someone from the community, a couple of people that would be stepping forward at specific times, may be slotted into the terms of reference for this committee as well. Right.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor Andrews. Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, Your Worship, through you to Mr. Ward. It's not specifically mentioning the BIA on here, but are they considered one of the pertinent stakeholders and interest groups? Because I think it's very important that the BIA have a representative on that committee. So can we specifically include in the official plan and steering committee that a BIA member be appointed?
They are on the list.
They're on the list, Councillor Sherwood. Yeah, down near the bottom, I believe.
What page number? It's not when I look at
45 of 45 of 129.
Okay,
Yes.
I'm an e-scribe. I don't
If you're
Page
Councillor
4.
Sherwood, if you're an e-scribe, it's page 4.
Page 4. Okay, because when I read page 3, it's not identified that way in page 3. So, okay, thank you.
Right. So I'm going to ask our clerk, Ms. Landry. So this list of organizations who may have some input on this official plan review, does this allow us to open up to other members of the public that may have expertise in this, as Councillor Peters had mentioned earlier? Madam Clerk?
I will ask Brandon just to confirm if I give an incorrect answer, but as it stands right now, that was not the intent, and that if council wishes to open it up to seek representation from outside of what is presented in the report, then council will have to give that direction to do so.
Okay, so let me follow up with Councillor Peters. Was that what your thoughts were, Councillor Peters, that maybe there might be other members of the public that might have a deeper understanding of these matters and that we might be able to draw upon out of the community?
Yes, I believe having representation from the committees will sort of have that special interest alignment. But when we solicit for other committees, we like them to be specific, right? Sustainable Orangeville has people with environmental passion. Planning is its own thing. We don't have a committee that addresses planning because we have staff to do that. But again, given the importance of the documents, I wouldn't want to deny the opportunity for someone to be a sitting member. And so again, not talking very large, but maybe 1 or 2 positions that we could open to the public. And, we may get some very good insight for what is maybe a 12-month commitment.
I think it's a very good point, Councillor Peters. I would certainly support that. Maybe adding 2 additional members from the community that are outside of those groups that have been identified. Councillors, any further comment on that? Is that something that we might agree on? Councillor Taylor?
If I may, there is other town committees that we have appointed individuals as well that aren't on that list. You know, as an example, the library board, the police services board. So I imagine it'll all be covered under what Councillor Peters is referring to. I just wanted to make council aware.
Right, Mr. Ward, any issue from your side on us adding a couple of additional members to be advertised out to the community?
Thank you, Your Worship. No specific issue. However, we certainly did consider this in terms of crafting the composition. We felt that it would be appropriate to have this composition of various committee representation or key interest groups, namely that of all the different facets of planning that an official plan covers in terms of environment, economic growth and development, employment uses, residential, et cetera. We felt that composition is well represented here. And as was noted earlier, it really is sort of a working technical group. So the hope is that we get more specific input from every one of those representatives based on their interests. We certainly do. Now, having said that, we certainly appreciate the will or the wishes of council to have this as more of a public engaged type platform. And we thought this committee setting would serve as a good venue for that. The committee meetings could be publicly accessible. They could be less formal engagement sessions of their own. So they would be certainly excellent venues to draw from more intimate community engagement directly. So we felt that putting that together, the composition would be giving us what we are seeking in terms of that more specific direction and also getting more enhanced community engagement.
Okay, very good. I saw Councillor Peters had his hand up and then Councillor Sherwood. Councillor Peters.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just quickly and through you, thank you, Mr. Ward, for the explanation. And I agree, not every committee necessarily needs representation. I guess just to emphasize, maybe the language could be something like up to 2 members from the public. I don't think we want to just grab the first 2 people that line up to contribute to a document that is very complex and technical in nature. But for someone that's not part of those committees that maybe has somewhat of a planning background and a long history in town, I think giving them a seat at the table is worthwhile. So that'll be my last comment on the matter. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Peters. Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, Your Worship, through you to Mr. Ward. With regards to the representative from the BIA, the discussion amongst the board was to have the general manager sit on this. Her being an employee of the BIA, would then she not be entitled to vote? Or are we best to have her sitting as a non-voting member and also include a BIA board member for voting purposes?
Mr. Ward.
Through Your Worship to Councillor Sherwood, I'm not clear on the ins and outs of that in terms of how that works with the general manager being an employee and whether that poses an issue with their representation on the committee. I don't believe it would necessarily, but it is something we'd have to maybe look into further. It may be more prudent to appoint one of the members and have the general manager more in sort of the advisory role.
Like an ex officio.
Correct.
Okay.
Thank you.
Very good. Councillor Taylor.
For what it's worth, Your Worship, thank you. I would prefer to have a member of the BIA as opposed to the general manager, and no offense to the general manager, just be great to have that hands-on business person involved in such a key area of the town and where we're going. So that would be my wish.
I'll take that comment back to the next board meeting then. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you.
All right, councillors, any further questions or comments at this moment? We have a motion on the floor to approve this. We've got Councillors Peters and Taylor on the committee, and we are voting to add up to 2 additional members of the public that may have some more in-depth knowledge of planning matters. Councillor Peters, that is the motion?
I would hope so. I don't believe I moved or seconded it, but if the original movers and seconders are in line with that thinking.
Right. Yeah, who were the original movers? I forget. We've had a lot of conversation. Go ahead, Madam Clerk.
Councillor Sherwood and Councillor Taylor.
All right, so Councillor Sherwood and Taylor, is what I recapped there satisfactory to you both?
Sounds fine to me.
We talked about it so long, I didn't remember seconding.
Yes. Okay. All right. So all in favor?
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Ward. All right. Moving on to 12.3. This is an information update regarding building modernization and energy saving collaboration. This is a report CPS 2021-049. And it's a recommendation that the report information update, modernization, and energy saving collaboration dated June 28th regarding an update on Enercan vendor list be received. May I have a motion on this, please? Councillor Peters, seconded by Councillor Andrews. I see Ms. McKinney on board. Ms. McKinney, would you like to give us a Coles Notes version on this report and an update, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to the council. This is a follow-up to the report that we brought forward in April, where there was a request that we look into accessing the federal Enercan list. We did look into it, and we can't access it directly, but we did work with our procurement legal team, and what we can do is put in place a process that gets us to the same goal, whereby we would have an open call at the beginning that would allow vendors to express an interest and give them an opportunity to join that federal list, which is an open process, and then be on the list to move to the second phase.
Very good. Well, I think this is an exciting initiative. I want to thank you for spearheading this. You know, I think it's going to be good for our town going forward. Anybody wish to make a comment or question, Ms. McKinney, at this point? No? Okay. Did we, I forget, did we have a motion here? We did have a motion. Okay, all in favor?
Yes.
All right. Thank you very much, Ms. McKinney. All right, moving on, we have a report. This is the Economic Development Report, CMS 2021-014, the Economic Report for 2019 and 2020. Very detailed report, lots of good information in there. I want to thank Ms. Phillips and her team for putting this together. Lots of exciting things going on in Orangeville, even with the negativity of COVID. I see from the numbers that there are a number of things that have been down in the last year, but I think, you know, spring is here, and, you know, hope springs eternal, I think, and we've got some good things to look forward to as we go out of COVID. There's some new businesses that have come on board, some significant businesses, and there are some other things percolating in the background. So again, thank you to Ms. Phillips. Ms. Phillips, did you want to make any comment here on your report?
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd be happy to highlight some of the more significant items from the report. Just briefly, each year our office puts together an economic outlook that speaks to changes that have occurred over the past year. We look at economic indicators, including business and employment figures, development activity, and housing prices, and we try to outline activities and initiatives that have been undertaken. To report accurately on business operations and employment figures, we rely very heavily on data from the province of Ontario. Because of the pandemic and the delayed 2019 income tax year, we were unable to obtain the data required to report on 2019 in 2020. And so this report is a demonstration of the two combined years, which in hindsight was kind of good to see because we could compare pre-pandemic versus pandemic activity. Clearly, our community, like every other community in Canada, has been impacted by this pandemic. Well, we've seen approximately between 2019 and 2020, we lost approximately 1,200 jobs. And this decrease in employment numbers is about a 10% loss. This is also in keeping with the rest of the county of Dauphin, along with the province of Ontario. With the exception of transportation and warehousing, job losses were recorded across all economic sectors. Not surprisingly, the most significant declines occurred within accommodation and food services, the arts and entertainment sector, and in the other services category, which is a broad kind of all catch-all category and includes personal care services, dry cleaning, funeral services, automotive repair, and things like that. With these job losses, our unemployment rate for the economic region that we're part of also climbed from 4.7% in 2019 to 7.5% in December of 2020. It's really important to note, though, that we're part of an enormous economic region that spans from north of Barrie down past Kitchener to south of the 401. And we do know that Barrie was suffered greatly during the pandemic and had a number of closures. So that's not necessarily reflective of our specific region. Well, we saw business losses and the hardest hit were sole proprietors or businesses with fewer than 10 employees. The majority, most of our businesses were resilient. We saw less than about a 1% decrease in employment or in total businesses operating within the community. And that's positive in some ways. Our business losses were balanced out by growth in some other areas. So where we lost some in retail, accommodation and food, and in the professional, scientific and technical sectors, we gained businesses in the construction industry and in the other services category, along with agriculture, real estate, and educational services. As we look to the future and we're emerging from this pandemic, from a longer term perspective, data from Statistics Canada and from the Western Ontario Wardens Caucus indicate that well over the past 10 years, total employment increased by 6% in Dufferin County. Within the next 8 years, where our job numbers are expected to grow by another 7% again. Orangeville is currently home to 62% of all jobs in Dufferin County. So so we should expect to see a significant share of that job growth in our community. Sectors driving growth for the future are anticipated to be in the healthcare, construction, professional services, education, and manufacturing sectors. The office continues to field inquiries, and demand for our services has increased by 30% in the past year. And we continue to capitalize on program funding to support our local businesses wherever we can. In addition to 2 digitalization programs that we've operated over the last year and provided collectively over $100,000 to 43 small businesses in Orangeville, we're now in the process of applying for another round of the digitalization program. And if it's approved, we'll be able to provide grants and supports to all commercial businesses in the community. We also capitalized on a grant available through Central County's tourism recently and received funding to help offset the costs associated with introducing an app that will use augmented reality to promote visitation to the town's arts and culture features. The app was launched today, and a version of this new tool is also available on the tourism and attraction section of our website for use as a planning tool by visitors to the community. We received a provincial grant of $32,000 over the past year to provide enhanced virtual consulting services to local businesses and provide them with expert guidance in specific areas that they're struggling with. This program will be available through until September, and the tourism-related businesses impacted by the pandemic, retail, accommodation, food services, and the arts and entertainment sector are priority target areas. And finally, the last thing I'll just highlight is that we are also investing significant time and resources into supporting businesses hard hit by the pandemic through the implementation of our new tourism strategy. A new tourism brand is underway. Blogging has been introduced on our section of the town's website improvements, tracking mechanisms, signage updates, and new programs to encourage visitation are all underway. And as tourism opens up, we'll be ready to launch these initiatives first in a bite-sized and then a scalable fashion. Thank you, Your Worship.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Phillips, very much for your report. Councillor Andrews, I saw your hand up, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you, Your Worship. And Ms. Phillips, as always, I am just so enamored by what you and your team end up doing on behalf of our town. And especially during this past 14, 15 months, the information that you've provided in this report just shows the dedication, but also the resiliency of our business community. And I feel that we have some good things to look forward to. I also wanted to thank both you and the mayor for the Ask the Expert series that was in fact initiated, especially during a time when COVID came about. A lot of people were really questioning what opportunities for survival were going to be available. And I think that the uniqueness of that particular series and really where we take a look at other economic development departments and other municipalities, you know, Ms. Phillips, you and your team are shining stars. And so I just wanted to echo that tonight. And I, as I mentioned, I look forward to some sunnier days in the months to come as we get out of this, as we move into phase 2 and phase 3 of the recovery.
Well said, Councillor Andrews. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you again, Ms. Phillips. So we have a motion on the floor to receive this report. Any further comments? All in favor?
Yes.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Phillips. Moving on to item 12.5. This is a discussion about our Broadway brick replacement project. We have had a further report from town staff on this. And it's a recommendation that INS 2021-045, the Broadway brick replacement project, be received, and that staff be directed to take the steps necessary to proceed with construction at a date to be determined, and that staff oversee the completion of the design of the Broadway brick replacement project based on the consultant's recommendation, including the construction of a 2.2 meter wide concrete sidewalk adjacent to the buildings, concrete extended to the curbs, and at the intersection bulbs, including installation of tactile plates for AODA compliance, and paving stone boulevards, housing streetlights, trees, and ancillary street furniture. Councillors, we've got addendum number 2, attachment 2 of this report, which is giving us 3 options: fall 2021, a spring 2022, and a fall 2022 option. I think Deputy Mayor McIntosh, I see you have your hand up, sir. Go ahead.
Thank you, Worship. I'm not sure if this be in a form of a motion, but I wish the project to be delayed until fall of 2022.
Right. Councillor Andrews, are you seconding that? Yeah. Okay, so councillors, let's chat about this. I know there's been a lot of conversation, a lot of business owners have weighed in. You know, there's some pros and cons here of delaying, but it seems like the consensus is people would like to see this delayed. I've got Councillor Taylor, then Councillor Sherwood, then Councillor Post. Go ahead, Councillor Taylor.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll be very brief. First of all, I'd like to thank all the businesses who contacted council over the weekend and last week, and I did respond to the majority of the requests that I had. It feels to me like this is the best thing. My understanding is everyone needs income at this point in time, and this is what makes sense to us. I will be voting in favor of what the Deputy Mayor has suggested. I guess just for me, I just like to warn those businesses or suggest to those businesses, and again, that this does need to be done. It's a unique circumstance, and I hope everyone will remember next year in the fall that council delayed this really for the last 2 years. And next fall, it needs to be done. Like, it absolutely needs to be done. So we'll push off, or I'm with the Deputy Mayor, excuse me, I don't want to speak for council, but to push off for a year. But next year, we're not going to be very popular as well because it's going to be all ripped up. But it needs to be done. So we'll see you in fall of 2022 would be my wish. Thank you, Your Worship.
Yeah, very good. Councillor Sherwood and then Councillor Post.
Yes, Your Worship. One of the things I was hoping that council might consider is doing half perhaps in April of 2022 and the other half in September of 2022. That way we're doing it in a shorter period of time. And one of the things I'll explain is the BIA is very anxious to get its festivals and activities back on track. And they're looking forward to next year being the year that we will have in August, the Taste of Orangeville. Then in the fall, we have the harvest celebrations where the children really enjoy the fall harvest with the pumpkins going and the trick-or-treating. We have the Moonlit Magic where we light up the Christmas tree downtown, the tractor parades, and then of course we want to have the Santa Claus parade back. So I'm wondering if we push this all to the fall of 2022. I'm very much in support of pushing it, but if we push it all to the 2022 and we go through several months, then we have a situation where all of those activities that very much look forward to in the BIA in downtown will then be put on hold. Whereas I thought if we put, say, one side of the street from April to June and get all the equipment and everything cleared up so that we could do our blues and jazz and our summer festivals, and then in the fall do the rest, and we're not down a whole significant length of period of time. I do have another thing, but I want to have discussions with council on their feelings on that. Or perhaps Mr. Jones.
Mr. Jones, I know that mobilization of forces, splitting it like that's probably going to be a more expensive way to go, but could you comment on Councillor Sherwood's request, please?
Certainly. Thank you, Your Worship, and through you to Councillor Sherwood. There are several concerns with taking this approach, and most of them essentially end up costing the town more money. If we are looking to go that route, we would need our consultant to look at sort of where to end the first phase and start the second phase, and then put plans in place to make the transition work so that it would be safe from the time that the first phase ended and the second phase started. We would also be looking at asking a contractor to mobilize, demobilize, and mobilize again. With construction, once a project is awarded, we're always anxious to get a contractor on site. And once they've brought equipment to the site and they've committed their resources to working on a project, they like to move through it till it's over with. Once they demobilize from site, they would be looking at other projects. It's tougher for a contractor to schedule their time this way. And as a result, I would expect that the cost of the tender for this work would essentially go up. So while nothing is impossible, I would suggest that this could result in costing the town a fair bit of money. And, you know, when we're bringing a contractor back in, it's not always easy to say you need to show up on the Tuesday following Labor Day. They're wrapping up other projects. Their timing is what it is. Once we get them in, it's always bestest to move right through to the completion of a project.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Councillor Post, and then I think Councillor Peters, did you have your hand up? Councillor Post, go right ahead.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Councillor Sherwood, I really appreciate your thought to that. I agree with Mr. Jones, though. I think that the cost would be prohibitive. And my suggestion would be that council choose a start time if we do go ahead with the postponement till fall of 2022. And perhaps the BIA can change the dates of some of their plans to accommodate around the construction of when they would normally have the Taste of Orangeville and that kind of thing. I will also be supporting the push to fall of 2022 for a start. We did hear from several business owners who had a very consistent message that that's what they wanted to see. I want to thank Councillor Taylor because you articulated exactly what I wanted to say, is that there's really no good time for construction, but it needs to happen. So to all the business owners that are out there, if we push it this time, we really, really need to move forward in August of 2022. And we all need to be prepared for that. My last comment would be, I see in the recommendation that there is mention of the trees and the boulevards housing, but there wasn't a specific recommendation as to which option as to the consultant's original recommendations. So I know there were several recommendations about removing boulevard trees or removing ones that needed to be removed or removing all of them. So I just wanted to state what would be the recommendation in there. I would like to see as many trees as possible preserved in that recommendation. And with the way that it's written in the council agenda, was that the thought or the idea, Mr. Jones?
Mr. Jones.
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Post, with this construction being put off now until the fall of 2022, if I could suppose the outcome of the motion, it gives staff the opportunity to go back and talk to our consultant, and I suggest that it might be worthwhile coming back perhaps in September of 2021 with the details of what we're looking at from a tree perspective, as well as the other items that were brought up during public consultation that are noted in the report.
Perfect.
Right.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, certainly is some cost considerations for treating the trees properly. So that will be able to be brought to council to consider at the time of budgets. Councillor Peters and then Councillor Sherwood again.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you. So my comments on this has been a much more complex issue than I think we thought it was when we approved it back in 2019 for the 2020 budget. But from an engineering perspective, from a capital cost perspective, this fall still makes the most sense. Obviously, that argument does not take into account the incredible outreach we've had from the businesses. And obviously, that can't be ignored, and they make a very strong point. So I would agree that deferring it makes sense. But I do worry about pushing it all the way back to next fall. There are opportunities, I think, to do it in the spring, depending on how it's staged. It will be more efficient and it'll cut less into, I believe, the business's impacts. They can start before patios would typically open. This is not a knock on the Blues and Jazz Festival, but that one milestone seems to be driving the entire decision to avoid the spring. And given that we're already 18 months behind on this by the time we defer it from the fall, I still think it needs to get in there. And the longer we have this infrastructure deteriorating, the more it's going to add to the costs and the complications and the administrative efforts, both of staff and, the enjoyment of the downtown. So I understand that, many of you are looking to fall of 2022. I personally believe that's too long, and that it'll be a little more efficient in the spring. And, there's sacrifices no matter when we decide to go through with this work. So all of that said, I think spring is still the best solution.
Thank you, Councillor Peters. Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, Your Worship. So the idea of doing one side one season and the other side another season, I can see it's not going to go through. It was the suggestion. I'm more aligned with Councillor Peters. It would really be nice if we didn't have the winters we had and we could do it from January to March when retail business is just, in a bit of a standstill. So that would have been the ideal time, but I can't see contractors out there trying to battle snow and wind chill and everything else. So that's quite unfortunate. One of the things I would like to ask staff, please, is because it seems that this is going to go to 2022, which I'm very much in support of that. I'm just wondering if we can expand on the project, and this will give us an opportunity perhaps to report back and think about budgeting for 2022 to include, we might as well take advantage of this delay and maybe come back with a costing report to expand the project regarding all of the boulevard trees being replaced, meaning the ones going back to 1991, not just the 10 that they proposed, but going back to that original tree canopy. That will come as a cost. The new bike racks, I don't believe were budgeted in this original proposal. Perhaps some new waste receptacles, electrical outlets, and any other suggestions or ideas that may have been put in the CIP. And I think if we're going to be delaying this project in a year, this is our opportunity to bring all of those in and then budget for them accordingly. So I would like to ask Mr. Jones, do we need to put forward in our motion, if perhaps my dear friend, the Deputy Mayor, would add to his motion for the staff to report back to include those extra opportunities for extra hardscape?
Yeah. Deputy Mayor?
Absolutely.
Okay.
So
one of the other things.
Do you understand what I'm asking for, Mr. Jones, and all those things, or did I speak too fast?
Madam Clerk, have you captured what Councillor Sherwood had stated?
Yes, I believe so. I heard bike racks, waste receptacles, electrical outlets, the trees that were previously there, and I also heard items that were included in this are addressed in the CIP. Is that correct?
And I meant to add public seating too, because if we're going to be replacing that seating, that may be something that we have to look at as well. So again, it's an opportunity to look at those costs. If it means reporting that those are going to come at extra cost, an opportunity to bring them to the 2022 budget. Right,
and if I could add one more thing, I was I didn't like to see that the water receptacles were going to be capped and that the fountains and potential water filling stations and things like that were going to be dismissed in hand. I'd like that to be added on to and costed, and look at the pros and cons. Obviously, in our harsh winters, water type things take a beating, but I'd like to understand what is available and what we can have. As I said previously, I've seen at AMO and at FCM some very interesting multi-use water devices, freestanding water devices that included fountains, water filling stations, and dog bowls, for instance. And I'd like to see a couple of those on Broadway.
I agree with you. I agree with your worship. That's why my point is, if we're going to delay this a year, let's take advantage of maybe the opportunity to include all of these on a wish list.
Right on.
Based on budget.
So, Madam Clerk, you've got all this captured now. We're going to have Deputy Mayor's motion to move to mid-August to end of October construction voted on with Councillor Sherwood's add-ons as well. We're good?
Yes, I have a mover, but I don't have a seconder.
All right, let's have a seconder then. Okay, we've got Councillor Sherwood's got her hand up there. Thank you, Councillor Sherwood. All right, councillors, any further discussion or comments at this moment? All right, all in favor?
Yes.
Very good. And opposed? Councillor Peter is in opposition. Very good. Thank you, councillors. Moving on to correspondence, we've got two items of correspondence. One from Alison Shield of the BIA regarding tree canopy, and another from Kathy Spraggett regarding speed issues on Elderbury and a request for a speed bump. Can we have a motion to receive these two items, please? Councillor Taylor, second by Councillor Post. Anybody wish to speak to this at all? Councillor Post.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to make a comment to Ms. Spraggett if she's listening. There is going to be a traffic calming report that's coming back to council in the next coming months, where it will identify things like speed bumps and those types of things. So when we receive an item of correspondence, sometimes it feels like we've just thrown it on a shelf and not looked at it. But I just want the residents to know, especially, there was a number of residents who signed a petition in that thought, that this is all being taken into consideration as we look forward into different traffic calming measures. So while we're receiving it, that is an acknowledgement that we have gotten it, but there is work being done in the background and it's not being ignored. So thank you for the time of signing the petition and all of that good stuff. So
very good. All right, councillors, all in favor of receiving this correspondence? Thank you. Moving on to item 14, we have committee and board minutes. A recommendation that the minutes of the following meetings be received. The May 20th, 21 Heritage Orangeville minutes. May I have a motion to receive those minutes? Councillor Peters, second by Councillor Andrews. Any comments or questions regarding those minutes? All in favor of receiving them?
Yes.
Thank you. I'm sorry?
Sorry, Mr. Mayor. If I may just interject, I may have missed it, but just with respect to Ruth's report, I know you took the vote, but I did miss who was the mover and seconder. So if you could just ask for that for me again.
Councillor Andrews, I believe, was the mover. I think Taylor is seconder.
I think I did.
Hey,
okay.
Thank you so much. And then if I may, just one other matter of business with respect to Terence Carter's presentation. He did ask just for a formal receipt of his email. So if I could just get a motion from council in that regard, that would be great.
We have a motion to receive Mr. Carter's email. Councillor Post, second by Councillor Andrews. All in favor?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Clerk. All right, notices of motion prior to meeting. I see none. Notices of motion at meeting. Councillor Post.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'll just take a moment to read off my notice of motion. I will be asking as well, just in the essence of time, that perhaps we can consider waiving notice on this motion, but I'll leave it to the will of council. So my motion reads, whereas the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada has identified 94 calls to action And whereas there is a responsibility for all levels of government to actively work towards truth and reconciliation, and whereas action item 62 calls for education for reconciliation, and whereas action item 79 calls for partnership and collaboration with local Indigenous organizations for commemoration, and whereas the Dufferin County Cultural Resource Circle and the local elders have been consulted and are supportive of this more important initiative, therefore be it resolved that an orange crosswalk be installed at Broadway and First Street, design specifics to be decided, to commemorate all of the Indigenous children who were stolen from their families and forced to attend residential schools, and to have this crosswalk serve as an important step towards reconciliation in our community, and that up to $10,000 be allocated from, and I'll fill in the blank for funding, to cover the cost of the crosswalk, and that the crosswalk be installed by September 30th, 2021, which is the very first National Day for Truth and Reconciliation. So that's my motion as it reads. I have left the funding allocation blank to pass it over to perhaps Ms. Syed if she can fill in. She gave me a couple of recommendations, but or suggestions, but I will pass it over to her if she could.
Ms. Syed.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through Your Worship, to the rest of Council. So the couple of suggestions that I provided to Councillor Post includes a community grant as one. We're looking at $10,000, and as of today, we have about 9,000 left in that funding envelope. The other alternative is 2020 general surplus that we have realized to the tune of 1.9 million.
All right. General surplus, Councillor Post?
Yep, that's fine. That's fine with me. And I would appreciate if we could waive notice, but again, any questions from council and I'm open to those.
Let's make that part of your motion here, that we're going to waive notice to get this into staff's hands as quickly as possible. Do we have a seconder for this? Councillor Andrews, questions or comments? Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, through you, Your Worship, to Councillor Post. So will the sidewalk be at all 4 spots of the intersection? Or
no.
Did I misunderstand?
No, through you, Mr. Mayor, if I could. The thought would be that it would be the one crosswalk that would go from Rustic across to the bank that's across the road there, Meridian Bank, yeah. So it would be at that intersection. It would cross Broadway there at First Street.
Oh, and that's 10,000 just for that one spot?
Up to. I got Mr. Jones to give us a bit of a range. So Mr. Jones, again, the design specifics haven't been decided exactly yet. So we wanted to allocate enough money to make sure that the project was covered. But Mr. Jones, I'll turn it over to you.
Just before Mr. Jones answers, Councillor Post, it would be nice if we're going to offer up to 10,000. Wouldn't it be nice to be able to do it on both sides of First Street on Broadway if funding would permit it?
If funding would permit it, absolutely. Mr. Jones?
Through you, Your Worship, to Councillors Post and Sherwood, I said $10,000 when it was a crosswalk on one side, trying to be good and conservative, not knowing exactly what the design would look like. Of course, we've recently done the rainbow crosswalks, and that cost for those two was about $12,000. That was based partially on length. Now, with rainbow crosswalks, I wouldn't go so far as to say they're common, but they're certainly not unique. So that's something that line painters do. I don't know what this design is going to look like, and how much time it is going to take. There was talk of potentially painting orange and then stenciling on top, which might require the line painter to demobilize and come back at another time to put another stencil on. So we wanted to keep a significant amount of money so that we weren't coming back to council looking for more.
And if I could just add, Mr. Mayor, one of the design thoughts that myself and the Dufferin County Cultural Resource Circle came up with was, of course, it has to have the white lines on either side, but within those 2 white lines for it to be painted orange. And then there was a specific feather design that Deb had showed me that has been done on other crosswalks, which is beautiful, and that was approved through that organization as well as through the elders, that it could be stenciled on in white, and that way it's not just an orange crosswalk. My hope is that right now we're in a really delicate time in the country as we continue to do searches of all these residential school properties, and my thought is that in time, whenever those searches are complete, that those crosswalks would serve as a spot that we could potentially add a plaque that would commemorate all of the children and would have some history on it so that it could really serve as an educational piece. But that wouldn't be appropriate to add right now because there's just too many uncertainties at this point. So, but that was my hope that kind of in the future we could look at that. Okay,
so we have a motion on the floor. I'm sorry, was there a seconder to this? Yes, Councillor Andrews. Okay, Councillor Peters, you wish to speak to this?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just through you to Councillor Post, is the waiving of motion to accommodate the installation timeline that you spoke of?
Yes, that was my hope. I want to be respectful to infrastructure services as much as I can be, and I understand I'm already putting them on a very tight time constriction with asking for September 30th. So I'm just hoping that the sooner we can move it forward, that will give them appropriate time to be able to make that happen.
Mr. Jones.
Through your worship to Councillor Post, with respect to timing, the sooner we could get the details of the design, the better. And that way we could start costing it and trying to ensure that we had a contractor who could do the work. Our line painter, as I'm sure all of you know, has been in and busily working over the last week or so. It'll require us probably to get them back in, or if they're not available, look for another line painter when the time comes. So the sooner we can get the design, the sooner we can move forward and try and get it scheduled.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Ms. Syed, you have your hand up.
Yes, Your Worship, thank you. Your Worship, I do need some direction with funding allocation. Listening to Mr. Jones, it appears that this may require more than 10,000. So if you can just provide me some direction with the funding allocation. If we are taking it out of surplus, I do need some direction from council.
Well, I think 10,000 was the upper limit for the one crosswalk going from Meridian to Rustic, correct, Mr. Jones? Are you concerned about the application of stencils that might cost more? Is that what you thought of?
Your Worship, I tried to come up with what I consider to be a conservative figure. I do consider $10,000 to be conservative for one crossing. Ultimately, once we get the design and we get it costed out, we'll know for certain. I don't think it's going to cost more than $10,000, but if it does, that's something, we could reach out to council on that at that time.
Very good. Okay. Thank you, Madam Treasurer and Mr. Jones. Okay, so councillors, we have this motion on the floor, again, waiving the timeline and privilege on making this firm today. All in favor? Very good.
Thank you, Council, for the support. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Councillor Post. So I have another notice of motion. We're all struggling with the unsettling news here. Again, this is another thought about symbolism and support to our Indigenous community. I was approached by someone a couple of days ago regarding the lighting of another municipality in the GTA's town hall in Orange in support of the lost children here. This that is really shocked the country, and so the thought here would be to illuminate our town hall from the period of June 30th to July 2nd, and the facade of Alder Street. The Alder Street complex has been the home of a lot of Indigenous ceremonies. It's the home of a permanent placement of the Indigenous flag, and also the home of the Indigenous medicine wheel. So it's really a building that has some tradition with respect to celebrating Indigenous culture. I know Councillor Andrews and his position as principal of Humber College and his involvement with the DCCRC is really understanding of this. So, Councillor, I've also reached out to a group called the Eagle Heart Singers. This is a Indigenous drum group who has played in town before. They are available to do a performance on the evening of June 30th. So the thought would be to bathe the town hall in orange, have the Eagle Heart Singers perform for an hour around dusk. Again, it's hard to grasp what is going on with respect to the residential schools and what's been found, but I think we need to support our Indigenous community. I think we need to show some symbolism in the support that the community has for what's going on right now. The cost of doing this is in the range of $3,000 to $4,000, and I think it's a relatively small amount of money, but I think it's important that we do take this step and have an immediate recognition of what's going on. And the Truth and Reconciliation Commission report states that all levels of government need to buy into the Reconciliation Commission's report, and we need to at all levels of government support our Indigenous community, the heritage and culture, and so I'd like to make a motion here, a notice of motion, and also waive the time restriction and time because we have to act on it immediately. So, but it would be to make this happen, to illuminate those two buildings from the period June 30th to July 2nd, to bring in the Eagle Heart Singers for a ceremony and hopefully record it and put it on our YouTube channel, and at a total upset a cost of $4,000. So may I have a seconder on that? Councillor Post, can we have some further comment? Councillor Post and Deputy Mayor McIntosh had their hands up, and Councillor Andrews. Go ahead, Councillor Post.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I just want to say that I think this is an absolutely beautiful idea. I think it's a lovely tribute, especially I think as so many Canadians right now are struggling with how to celebrate Canada Day, because it definitely feels a little different this year with some of the discoveries that have been made. And I think this is a great first step into some truth and reconciliation work from our municipality. And I think it's a wonderful initiative. So thank you for bringing it forward, and I'm happy to second it.
Great. Deputy Mayor McIntosh and then Councillor Andrews.
Thank you. Obviously, I will be supporting this. I was going to ask, because of COVID and stuff, how are people going to see this? But I understand it's going to be videotaped and shown on maybe Rogers or the YouTube channel. Or
I think, if council does vote in favor of this, I think I would like to speak with Ms. McKinney and perhaps Ms. Duncan tomorrow morning to talk about this. I think recording it and then putting it up on our YouTube channel. There's Ms. McKinney weighing in right now. I'm hoping that we have the resources, Ms. McKinney, that we might be able to record this and edit a copy and put it on our YouTube channel to share to the public. Can you comment at all?
Mr. Mayor, through you, anticipating that this would be discussed tonight, Sheila and I did touch base earlier in the day. We would have to work with an external videographer to come in and do that event, but we absolutely can get it done. And then it's just the turnaround, whether it's formally Canada Day or the next day, will impact the cost of the promotion of that video.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Very good. Thank you, Ms. McKinney. Councillor Sherwood, then Councillor Andrews. Go ahead, Councillor Sherwood.
Yes, Your Worship, I'll be supporting this motion, and I think it's an absolutely must that we do this. But one of the things you recommended was about the cost, and I would like to see the costs come out of our budgeted community grants. I believe the treasurer mentioned we have a $9,000 amount still available, and I would like to see that also be included in the motion.
Okay, thank you. I agree.
So it's I believe it's under the committees. We threw that $10,000 in as an emergency. I think it's classed as emergency. The treasurer can clarify me, but I believe if I looked on our budget under committees and boards and committees, we threw $10,000 under an emergency fund.
Madam Treasurer, do you recall that? You're muted, ma'am.
My apologies, Your Worship. Through Your Worship, Councillor Sherwood, that can be accommodated.
Perfect.
Okay, very good. Councillor Andrews and then Mr. Brennan. Councillor Andrews, go ahead.
Thank you very much, Your Worship. As has been echoed by many of my fellow council members, this is a time for reflection. This is a time of support, and I'm firmly supporting this initiative, and I thank you for doing so. I do have a question for Madam Clerk. Because of the fact that I also sit as a board member, I'm wondering, do I have to end up, restricting myself on voting for this because of the suggestion, Councillor Sherwood, to pool some of the monies, or pull the money, I should say, from the community grant allocation.
Madam Clerk.
Councillor Andrews, I believe the way the motion is currently worded, it is the town that is expending the funds, and it's not the funds going through the organization that you're referring to. So I don't see that you have any conflict in that regard.
Well, thank you for that explanation. And again, thank you, Your Worship, for guiding us through this and working with the organization. And I feel that just for the sake of June 30th, is that not part of the reopening date where we will have the opportunity to gather with some people if this is going to take place at Town Hall or outside?
I think the initial intent, without knowing about the reopening, was to record it, to share it to the public. But Mr. Brennan, can you comment on reopening? Are we allowed to gather it all outside on the 30th? Do you know?
Your Worship, under stage 2, I think the limit of social gatherings outside would be 25 persons. So that's really, as an organized event, where if we're going to follow the provincial standards and rules, where we would cap it at.
Yeah, so I don't think we'll be advertising this, for the public to gather here. I'm hoping, talking with Ms. Duncan and Ms. McKinney tomorrow, that we can come up with a nice way to record it for everybody and to spread the word and get the message out that we've done this. So hopefully that will happen. Any further comments, councillors? Mr. Brennan, I'm sorry. Go ahead, sir.
Your Worship, thank you. And I noted that you said up to $4,000, but given the fact that we're going to have to contract out some of the recording and stuff, I would suggest that maybe you go up to $6,000 or $7,000, because we wouldn't want to get into this in a day or two and then find out we don't have enough money. And so I think it's a great initiative, and I just would like to make sure that we got a smooth path forward to get it done.
Okay, councillors, so I will amend my motion from $4,000 to $6,000 per Mr. Brennan's thoughts, and of course, Ms. McKinney suggesting that a videographer would have to be hired out to do this rather than staff. So that's new information. So our seconder, Councillor Andrews, I believe, you're good with that? All right, councillors, any further discussion on this item? No. All in favor?
Yes.
Great. Thank you. Thank you very much. We've got new business. Councillors, is there any new business that anybody would like to comment on? Mr. Brennan.
Worship, Madam Clerk, hopefully it's the right time to bring it up, but as we was just speaking about truth and reconciliation, as you're aware, we lowered our flags last week to pay respect to the unfortunate discovery recently. The intent was to keep the flags lowered for a week, which would bring it up to this Friday, looking at July 1st on Thursday. Does council, I just want to make sure that council is okay with that, or do you want a different time to bring our flags back to full mast? Direction would be appreciated, council.
Well, I think the 1 week is sufficient. I mean, I think we're going to be reeling from this for some weeks or months to come. I don't know, flag up, flag down. It's I don't know. Councillor Post, you've got some thoughts. Go ahead.
My suggestion would just be, with the approval of the lighting of Town Hall, perhaps once that's over, the flags can be raised back up to full mast at the end of that time. Which is
July 2nd. And remember, folks, we have an Indigenous flag flying at Alder in perpetuity. So we're always honoring our Indigenous people at all times, and we will never forget what's gone on and what has been uncovered in the last several weeks here. Thank you, Mr. Brennan. So your direction, I think here, Councillor Post is going to make a motion. I will second it, that flag will be put back at July 2nd at dusk, I guess. Yeah. All right. All in favor? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Brennan. Any other new business, councillors?
Mr. Mayor,
Yes, go ahead.
I'm just giving you a friendly reminder, Mr. Mayor. I think you were going to raise an item with respect to the Legion and bringing that forward on July the 12th.
Oh, yes, yes. Thank you for reminding me. So, councillors, so this will be a notice of motion at the meeting here. The Legion has been working for 3 or 4 years now to try and put another monument at Greenwood Cemetery. We've recently, I think, got the funding now to move ahead with that, and we're going to pull together an information package and report to council. Council's going to have to approve the installation of this monument, the recap of the funding for it, of which council has already approved $5,000. The Legion has approved $7,000 of their funds, plus there's some private and corporate donations that are going to make up the balance of this. So coming on July 14th, will be a report to council for us to vote on, to give direction to staff to move ahead to make this monument happen prior to November the 11th, Remembrance Day. So that's, I guess, the notice of motion at meeting, and we will bring that forward on July the 14th. So thank you, Madam Clerk, for reminding me on that.
Yes. Yes, Mr. Mayor, and if I may, I think it may just come as a motion, potentially, just depending on what we need to include in it, but it will come at the July meeting, for sure.
Yes, yes, thank you, thank you. Okay, question period. Now, Councillor Taylor had warmed me up previously that we have a young gentleman on the line. I don't know the name at this moment. Madam Clerk, do we have somebody online who wishes to ask a question?
I do see that we do have someone on the line, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. So, Councillor Taylor, do you know the name of this young person?
This is Nathan, Your Worship, and he'd like to speak to you about some safety concerns that he has.
Okay. All right. So, again, Mr. Bernardo, it's *6, is it for the?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, *6 to unmute.
Yes, so Nathan, if you're on, if you press *6 on your phone, you're brought into our meeting, and we're happy to hear your question.
Hello, my name is Nathan. Thank you for letting me speak tonight. I live on Spencer Avenue, and I need cars to slow down so there are no accidents. June 14th was the worst day of my life. I lost my cat DJ to a car. He was hit in front of my house. I need traffic to slow down, so accidents like this don't happen anymore. I don't want my friends and neighbors to lose their pets like I did. I don't want any people getting hurt either. People drive ridiculously fast on my street. Please help me. Please help and make my neighborhood safer. Thank you for listening to me.
Well, thank you very much, Nathan. I'm very sorry to hear about your pet. That's terrible, and our condolences to you and your family over the loss of your pet. As has been mentioned earlier in this meeting, we are working on a traffic safety plan for the town. I know Councillor Taylor has brought up safety issues on Spencer in the past. There have been some important changes made in terms of speed limits and have you in town. So we are listening, and I want to thank you, Nathan, for coming to our meeting and giving your opinion and your voice to the council tonight. So thank you, Nathan. All the best.
Thanks for
Okay.
letting me speak.
Yes, so you're welcome, son. All the best. All right. So, councillors, we're now moving on to bylaws, and there are a number of them here. So, on December 11th, 2017, we received PW 2017-55 and authorized the passing of the bylaw listed below to assume the subdivision. And this, I think, is with respect to the Sarah Properties subdivision and assuming of the roads. This is a bylaw to assume the roads, works, and services in Sarah Properties Development Subdivision RP 7M-47. We also have a bylaw to amend traffic bylaw 78-2005 regarding parking on one side of the street. and a bylaw to establish fees and charges for the clerk's division, and a bylaw to amend the traffic bylaw 78-2005 for a stop sign, and a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the Council of the Corporation of the Town of Orangeville as regular and closed council meeting held on June 28, 2021. May I have a motion to pass all these bylaws, please? Deputy Mayor McIntosh, seconded by Councillor Andrews. All in favor?
Oh, just
Oh,
your
you
worship.
want to comment? I'm sorry if there's comments. Yes, Councillor Sherwood. Go ahead.
So your worship, this is the first time I believe we're seeing where the recommendation is for the stop sign. We had, when we approved the stop sign on Rolling Hills, we had, I know the approval was based on the recommendation from Mr. Jones. And so Mr. Jones, is this confirmation that that is where this stop sign is going to be, or is that still in the discussing stage?
Mr. Jones.
Through you, your worship, to Councillor Sherwood. No, the decision has been made. We intend to install the stop sign at the intersection of Rolling Hills with J Crescent and Howard Crescent.
Okay.
So do those two roads meet, Jay and Howard?
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay. So it will make it a four-way stop. Thank you. That's good.
Thank you, Councillor Sherwood. Thank you, Mr. Jones. Any further questions on these bylaws, councillors, before we vote? Nope. All in favor? And a motion to adjourn, please. Councillor Taylor, seconded by Councillor Post. All in favor? All right, folks. Thanks very much. Enjoy the rest of your evening.
Good night.
Good night, all.
Good night, all.
Take care, folks.